There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, if you want. 1, 2, 3, set, go.
Right now on the Power Chord Hour, it is an absolute honor to be talking to the punk rock icon that is Jean Beauvoir. John has just released a brand new book called Bet My Soul on Rock and Roll, Diary of a Black Punk Icon. It documents the decades and decades of amazing stories and moments in John's career. There are quite a few. I am currently in the middle of reading the book and extremely excited to talk about the man who has lived it all. I mean, who better to talk to than the one who lived this book? So, John, how are you, man?
Everything's good. Everything's good. I'm happy that, the book is finally out. It was a lot of work, you know what I mean? And, I got this story out. I think it's very important. It was something that was very important to me to get done.
I as a reader, I can also say I'm happy you got it out there. I'm really I'm enjoying it very, very much so. And something I gotta say, I mean, even before reading this, I thought it, but like reading the book, I would say a good word to describe you is range. You have range. Like I don't think anyone could define you as just a guitarist or a bassist, a record producer. I don't think someone could just pigeonhole you to one genre. Like you do so much and you've done so much. So like, has that something that you've been like conscious about in your career? Like that you want to mix things up, or is that just kind of how your career has went?
It went that way, but I did want to do it. I always liked the challenge of doing different things, and not feeling like you're obligated to do one thing. And like, for example, if you're black, you have to do R&B and hip hop. This does this kind of music, or this one does that kind of music. I always just loved songs, and that's another thing I see between. There could be a song that's done by Foreigner, actually could be done by Backstreet Boys, that actually could be done by a heavier band. But if the song is great, that's what comes across. So I've always focused on that for one thing, but also was a challenge for me. Like you said about the different careers, I said I didn't want to just be one thing. I said, I know the music business is hard, and I want to see if I can be known independently for each thing, as an artist, as a producer in his own right, as a songwriter in his own right, writing by for other artists. And then also, the genre thing just started happening. But then after the ball's rolling for a while, you start saying, wait a minute, I'm only missing two genres. So I might as well keep going.
Yeah, at that point, it's like, might as well. Let's just keep this going. I mean, because, really, I do think that is something with you. Like, and I think it's a great thing. Like, you're not known as that one thing, like the guy who's the bassist of that band or the guy who's that record producer. Like, people can know you. Like, I'm sure you meet people who they either know you from this band or they know you from this or that. It's not just one thing. Which
it's an interesting point that you bring up, because that's one of the reasons why I started doing some things that brought everything into one, like under one umbrella, because I started noticing that, like you said, that's a positive thing, but it can also be negative, because then people get confused as to, well, where does he belong? On a metal stage, on a pop stage,
I didn't think about that part. That's a really good point.
You know what I'm saying? And those kind of things come into play. That's why, for example, I did my Rock Masterpieces record that I released actually it's probably a couple of years ago now. But I did that record because I wanted to kind of bring all my different projects together under my name, so that people know, yes, Crown of Thorns, that was one of my projects. Voodoo X, that was one of my projects. And with the live show, I've gone further by doing the same thing, but adding even other songs, like a couple of songs I wrote for Kiss, or I'll play My Brain is Hanging Upside Down. I'll add Shocker, you know what I mean? So that people can know. And then the book is also kind of the icing on the cake to basically bring it all together.
Yeah, because I was aware of, and I won't say everything. I was aware of a lot of what you did before the book, but I'm reading it going, oh, like he did that. Like even I'm shocked. Like, I've followed your career, and I already kind of knew that, again, you had range, but reading it, you're like, wow, I didn't realize just how much range. But for you personally, and we're talking about this and how we really, I don't feel like can pigeonhole you to like one thing or anything like that. In your own mind, do you think of yourself primarily as one thing, be it a guitarist or bassist or producer or singer?
No,
or?
I see myself primarily as far as an artist as a singer. That's pretty much that. More than a bassist, because through the past years, I've only been I play a little guitar on stage, but it's mostly, singing. That's what I've been focusing on. That's what I always wanted to be, and somehow you got sidetracked and ended up playing bass here and that there and this there, but that was really my ultimate goal. And as a producer, I try to put that on aside. Like let's say I'm not an artist. I don't do anything else. I want to be able to say, well, he produced the Ramones, so he's a producer, or he produced that person or that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense, and it's nice to see. I mean, if that was your journey, like you want to be singer, it's nice to see that you've made it there. You've made it to the top of the singing hill. You got there. You're doing what you want now.
But you know what? You can never say what is made it. That's always a big question.
That's a good point.
What's success? Some people see success as personally, success can be something that people can chase their whole lives, and they never feel like they get it. They can have hits. They could be playing in a band, playing stadiums, but because they're in the band, they don't feel they succeeded because it's not their show, or there's always those kind of things that happen. But to me, if you could live and make money somehow and earn and keep with your your business as a singer, as a musician, then I would say that you're successful.
Is that something that you feel like you learned as your career went on? Because I think you're totally right. Like, I think ego and all these different things have come into play where people don't realize just because you're not like the main person or you're doing this or that. It's like, I feel like at some point you have to get out of your own way and go like, no, like these are all like you are doing accomplishing things. Like, was that something you learned along the way to kind of, realize what success could be, that it doesn't have to be this one definitive thing?
Yeah, I really learned that along the way, because I think that if you're constantly chasing this rainbow, it becomes extremely difficult and you remain extremely unhappy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
People can always make you feel like, oh man, wouldn't it be really great? It's too bad you didn't really make it, It's too bad wow, you should be a household name, or you should, And if you listen to that stuff over and over and over again, you can always end up feeling like you're a forever failure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I have a lot of friends in the business, believe it or not, who I feel take these things for granted. Who are like, oh, well, we just played Madison Square Garden. Yeah, that's nothing. I only like playing stadiums. You know what I mean? I don't want to play those little clubs.
There is perspective. That is true. It's like where you're standing, like you start realizing like no matter, and it's very healthy. Like you've obviously gotten to that place, but like it has to be awful to be someone in the music business who really, from a lot of other standpoints, people are looking going, this guy's made it or whatever, but in their head, they're still going like, it's never enough. Like it's always someone has something better. And it's like, well, how are you ever going to enjoy what you have done? Like the fruits of your labors and stuff. Like you can't do that if you're always looking at someone else.
That's right. That's so true. And so, yeah, it's something I learned along the way. Because you find yourself always like, it's always more, well, yeah, I know I have friends who like, have 20 hits, whatever in Korea or with this, and they're not happy because it's not 30, it's like, number one records, or it's just ridiculous. So that I learned that along the way. And I think it helped me to, be able to just, like you say, be happy for what you have. Be happy for everything else that you get. I mean, every time a success happens, which, they come and they go. One year you have a, Pampers commercial. Next year you have a the song that's in a major film, or next year it's a Korean hit, or next year it's your hit. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
you just keep it, and a couple of years goes by and you have nothing, and it just keeps going like that. And that's the music business. It's a roller coaster, and as long as you're in there and surviving and doing your thing, I would say you should, be thankful for what you have. And nothing wrong with trying for more.
Yeah, no.
Don't make it a prerequisite, you know what I mean, of your life.
Yeah, you'll never enjoy it. You'll never enjoy what you're doing. But let's get into the book now. How long did it take to put this book together? Like how long has this been something that you've been working on? Like how far back did this start getting worked on?
Well, I've been making notes. I've been making notes, I'd say probably for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Just every once in a while. I've been, time really goes by quickly. I know that I was contemplating writing a book when I was working with Steven. When I think about that, that's in 2005. You know what I mean? That I was already thinking about doing this. And so I would put little stories down because I kind of said, whenever I get to this, I'm probably not going to remember half the stuff. So I better now, make it a point to put some of this stuff down. I'm sorry, it just got a little loud here for a second. But to put some of this stuff down, and so that I don't forget, and maybe after a certain period of time, I'll have a bunch of them. So when COVID hit, there was a writer, a journalist actually, who was speaking to me, and then he kind of made me, people have always said, why don't you write a book? Why don't you write a book? And then we started working a little together, and there was a publisher, Chicago Review Press, that was very interested. They just got it. They just said, this is not just a music book. It's, we see it as for culture. It's a pop culture book. It's a this. So I said, you know what? Maybe this is the perfect time. And it was, and I had a good year. I had more than that, but with COVID and everything, to be able to focus on that book.
No, that is awesome. I mean, I assume, right, this is your first time ever putting together or writing a book, right?
Yeah, it is. And it was quite, it's something that you're proud of, though, at the end, when it's done, and I can look at it and say, wow, this is it's the way you felt when you first released the record back in the day, and your name showed up on whatever, a Kiss album, you know what I mean? And you buy that vinyl, and you just look at it and go, whoa, you know what I'm saying? You'd be like, whoa, look at my name on this label here. I can't believe it. That's what we would do. We'd pick up that vinyl and just stare at it. Because it was your first time,
But that's a great point too, because like at this point, I mean, I'm sure you've seen your name on tons and tons of records, but how many books have you seen your name on at this point?
On the front of it, none. So that's why. So that's it. It's a rewarding thing, and I actually kind of learned a new skill in a way. I've always, I'm a songwriter, but writing a book is different. So I kind of got forced into doing most of the writing myself, because the guy who I first had, COVID hit, he had to deal with his kids, and they had to be homeschooled, etc. So he had to bail out of the project.
Oh, geez.
And then I brought John Ostrowski in, but by the time that all came together, I was like already into a groove.
Yeah.
So it was more like I would send him things, he'd double check things, rearrange some things here and there. But in essence, I ended up writing the book, and then of course the company would edit. And I went through like 3 editors over there, which was a pain in the ass, to be honest. But anyway, and fact checkers, who check every little detail. Oh, I was in Paris doing this. Oh no, but that street is not across the street from that street.
Which you're telling stories. I mean, there's some of those you're going back decades. Like I'm sure they're going to be you might not remember everything exactly the way it was.
That's right. It's really hard.
Yeah, that has to be a different process than like putting a record together, like something like that. It seems a lot longer too.
It's a lot longer, and it's really, I think that took most of the time, is the research to remember exactly when things happen. I don't have the best memory. I'm not gonna lie.
No,
it's just not. I don't. I can't. There's some things I just don't remember at all. I mean, it's like, for example, I had a situation. I lived, when I first was in the Plasmatics, I was 19. I was living in an apartment. It was in Brooklyn, and it was the apartment of a famous black woman singer, old time singer. And we think it was, what's her name? Oh, God, what's the famous old time? I almost forgot now. See, I'm forgetting. You see what I mean? But anyway,
There's
it was
that
a
memory.
famous thing. You know, and there goes that memory. And I'm sitting here and I said, I heard that name over and over, kept coming up. And my brother tells me, that was her. You were living in her apartment. But I could not remember it. And I wasn't convinced that he was right. You know, so you don't want to do things like that and find out what, you know, but things like that, I just can't remember. And I mean, I lived there for like probably 2 years with my first wife.
I mean, so that has to be weird. Someone like telling you like your own, like correcting you on your own life. Go, actually, John, that wasn't what happened, or this is who it was.
That's right. It was pretty crazy. It's so that was the toughest part for me of writing the book, of actually getting things in the right order when things happen for real, remembering things not to be way off or, you know, or to be off at all. You know, so all of that stuff made it difficult. I
mean, if somebody if someone like really kind of put it out there where it's like, all right, you have to think through your life and like write it out and that just sounds overwhelming. That sounds so overwhelming to think out your whole life and all these parts.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And we're talking about going back, 45 years too.
Wow. Jeez.
You know, I have a hard time remembering what I did 3 days ago.
Oh, that is funny. You know,
anyway.
You know, I wanted to ask too, because like, you know, I'm like kind of I'm like, I don't know, I'm a few chapters in now and really enjoying it. And something I noticed, I mean, early on in your life, even in your childhood, you did quite a bit of traveling. So like I was wondering when it came to like touring and stuff later on, and really not even that later on in life, you were touring by your you know, early teens, but like, do you feel like that early traveling in your youth, like by the time it came to touring, like you had less of that allure of being on the road and seeing things? Like, did that change it at all, or no? Were you still pretty like all about
excited about it?
Yeah, excited about all that.
No, I was excited about it. It was very different. Any traveling I did, it wasn't that much. It was going to Haiti or going to France, you know, but it wasn't like being on the road with the band. You know what I mean? And the whole thing. It's such a different, new experience that is, you know.
Yeah.
So it was very exciting at the beginning. But right from the beginning, working with Gary U.S. Bonds, if that's what you meant.
Yeah. I mean,
that was exciting.
Yeah, that had to be pretty. Which I mean, I wanted to ask too. I mean, because you were that's your beginnings. I mean, musical director with Gary U.S. Bonds. Like, what do you, for those unaware? And I mean, I guess I kind of know, but even I guess I'm asking, like, what do you do with the role of a musical director? Like, what was your job with that?
Your job is to make sure that, well, for example, he first would say to me, okay, I don't like to rehearse. So in other words, he doesn't want to sit and mess around with details of like, okay, we go to the chorus now, we go to the verse now. You know what I mean? He knows the song. I already know the song. So it's your job to make sure that these guys that are in here are your band, or, you know, because it changed a couple of times. Sometimes at first it was my band, then it was guys that he had found, but he wanted me to deal with them. And your job is to just make sure that whatever that set list is that he has, that you're where you're supposed to be. Like he might say, okay, a week from now, we're going to meet in Florida, Sarasota, at this venue. You know, we're going to be there. I'll see you down there. Get there the day before, and know all the stuff. So literally, when you get there, it's, you know, you get on stage and you just start playing. And I mean, maybe at sound check, he might go through a couple of things here and there, but it was like literally. There were times where I'd have to like be telling the band certain chords as we were going.
Oh my God.
If he'd like have to pick a song out of, you know, because those guys do that, you know, they just all of a sudden, hey, we're going to do this song. Boom, they start doing it. So it's like, you know,
wow.
You know, just start following his mouth and go. And meanwhile, you know, tell the other guys. But that's it. That's the responsibility of the musical director, to make sure that the music is in place and ready for Gary.
Ooh, that sounds more like responsibility than just being one of the people in the band. Just being, at least then you're just like, well, I mean, I just got to worry about the bass parts, or I worry about the drum parts. Yours is, I mean, you got to worry about everyone, which I mean, he also, Like he also, I mean, putting the faith in you too, and I mean, it's so young to be like, hey, I know these songs, which I mean, yeah, I mean, I get that, you know, he knows the songs and everything, but even to put it in you, it's like, all right, get these guys ready for me, like get these guys to a point where they can just at a drop of a hat go, hey, let's play, you know, like we're not sticking to a play, like it doesn't sound like he's sticking straight to a set list. Like if he wants to do something, he'll throw it in there.
That's right. You know, it's a culture. It's like there are certain artists, you know, that are kind of end up working together. Even like Gary U.S. Bonds ended up being produced by Bruce Springsteen and Little Steven when he had that hit. What was there? This Little Girl Is Mine. Do you remember the comeback hit? Remember that hit?
I have heard that one. Yeah.
So that was a big hit for him many years after his original success. But those guys are all like that. You know, Bruce does that to his band. You know, he could be up there. He's got 100 songs in his overall set list, and nobody knows what he's going to play when.
Oh my God.
So at any time in the middle of the night, he could turn around and go, "Okay, boom," and the guys have to know it. You know, and that's just the way it is. That's like, so Gary was like that, and a lot of times we did these Dick Clark oldies shows. So you had people like, you know, the Platters, Chuck Berry, and Bo Diddley, and those guys would sometimes show up missing players. It was just a complete mess, and you know, a lot of times I'd have to jump in and handle that. It just worked. I had a pretty good ear for that. Very young, and that's it. I just did what I did, and it helped later on in life. There's no doubt about it, because you know, eventually you're always the musical director, because for all my records, if I'm going to go on, like now I'm going to go do festivals, I have to start rehearsals with the band. A couple of guys never played with them before, you know, so now I'm going to have to teach them all the parts and go through the whole thing, you know, and you know, you can rely on guys for a certain amount of it, that they go learn things on their own, but it's never right. It's always the groove is wrong. Like they hear the wrong notes. You know, so you're in it. You're in it.
Wow. So you're still, that's amazing. You're still basically doing what you were doing back then as musical director. It's funny too. You brought up that, you know, like the Dick Clark tour and everything. Cause I wanted to ask you about that, because you were talking about like jumping in with like guys like Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry and stuff. Like when you do something like that, because I mean, again, you were a teenager at this point. Like when you get on stage with someone like Bo Diddley or Chuck Berry, I mean, do you just have to not think about, like, were you already confident and comfortable enough to get up there and play with them, or do you just almost have to put your head down and not think about the fact that the guy you're playing with right now is like, it's Chuck Berry or something like that? Like, how do you do that so young?
You know, it's really funny when you're really young. You're actually fearless, and these inhibitions and everything that you have older, you actually don't have at that age. So I can remember I'd look at it like a great challenge. Ooh, this is exciting. It's going to be fun. It wasn't where you'd look at it like, oh no, I'm going on stage with this one or that one. You know, you were so comfortable doing it with Gary, and it's not like the songs weren't that difficult. We're not talking about, you know, songs that have a million chords in them. You know, I mean, Bo Diddley plays with his guitar completely open strumming. He doesn't even play a chord. He just puts one finger over the whole guitar.
That's amazing.
You know, and they're doing like these, you know, just, you know, sometimes a lot of his songs are very repetitious and stuff. So you get a handle, you know, of it fairly quickly. But to your point, you're so busy concentrating on making sure that you're watching him, whatever they're going to do, and just literally you have to watch that and be in time to be able to move your fingers and kind of give direction to the other guys who are watching your hands and your mouth.
Wow, jeez.
That's how it worked, actually.
I mean, I guess there is like as you say that, I think you almost have to be, like you're talking about, that youthfulness and the kind of, I don't know, fearlessness, the confidence and stuff. I guess maybe, you really do need that, because if you were overthinking it, it may not go over well if you started getting it in your head with that. It's better just go screw it. I can do this. Like, I can do it. Like, there's no, why would I think otherwise? I can go play with them.
That's right. That's exactly right. You don't think otherwise because you haven't lived the experience of getting in trouble, you know, messing up chords and get yelled, you know, all the negative things that could happen. You haven't had the chance to experience yet. So you just see the positives. You know what I mean?
Wow.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
Go ahead.
no, I mean,
Psychology, it's weird.
it really did. I mean, reading again the people you're working with so young, yeah, that being that way, that mindset definitely probably I think it helped you. I think it helped you very much to just kind of like, I can do it. Because if you and you could do it. The other thing is, I guess at the end of the day, you did do it. So I mean, you were right in thinking that.
Yeah, that's right. You'd be surprised when you're young. Like I said, a lot of the confidence that you could have up there. Hey, listen, that's what makes a lot of people, really successful when they know. Did you see that? What do you call it? That film about the tennis players, King Richard?
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh, you should have seen that. It's just talking about how it was like literally preordained that these girls are going to be the best tennis players in the world, and it was so planned since they were like literally could walk.
Wow.
It's like, and in the end of the day, they became that. So the point I'm making there is when you're young, because sometimes I'll look back and say, okay, now I know I wrote a book and I wrote all the details, but I say, but how exactly did I get from that band in the school to Kiss? It's like, and you say, I know there was no plan, right? And so I was living a million miles away from the city, nowhere even near any of these bands. So how did that happen? You know what I'm saying? And it's weird, when you think about it. You don't know how things happen. It's crazy. It's but anyways,
That
it's
yeah, that is just it is wild. I love reading all that stuff and your musical beginnings and everything. There's some really, like, again, like talking about range. I mean, there's tons of like punk and rock and all this stuff and everything, but like you go back further. I mean, you're playing with legends who like started rock, you know what I mean? Like Chuck Berry and stuff.
That's true. The Flamingos,
That's
like
right.
I think it's been a great thing. I mean, did I use it 100% to my benefit? Do I have 10,000 number one records? No, but still, I think that it was a real help for you to get the most out of music, because you learned harmonies from the Flamingos, you learned basic discipline of playing from Gary U.S. Bonds, and just basic musicianship, and it's not like these guys were bad. Gary U.S. Bonds players, one of them who I still used up till now was Tommy Lafferty, and he had just graduated from Berklee. If I'm not mistaken, the keyboard player was also from Berklee. I mean, so you're talking about these guys
are good. They know what they're doing.
They're great musicians, wonderful musicians, but that's where things that you learn working with some of these guys like Gary Bonds. They could be the greatest musician and know every scale and everything you can think of, but to get them to groove where the song feels right, just playing three notes can be impossible.
Yeah, you know what? Now this is something I would actually like to kind of talk about for a second too, as you bring it up. Like, do you feel like there's you need that balance of music theory and training and stuff, because there really is there's that technical side versus look at like the Ramones. The Ramones I talk about tons on this show. I mean, you worked with them, obviously. Those guys aren't Berklee, they weren't like classically trained by any means, but they had that feeling. They knew how to do what they were doing. They were good at what they did. So
that's right. And it's not that that's easy, because you'll be surprised. I mean, I've had this conversation a few times. You'd be surprised how many, what was I going to say? People that think they're great Berklee guys, great metal guitarists, they cannot play a simple Ramones song. I cannot get them to play it. It's impossible, because they're taught different things. Like a metal guitarist does a lot of. Do you play at all? Do you play a little bit?
Yeah, I'm mostly a bassist.
Okay, so you play.
Yeah.
So you understand what I'm going to say. So basically, metal guitarists are taught to have up and down strokes, and their up and down strokes, especially in speed metal, they're very precise and uniform. Okay, everything's exactly the same volume. Everything's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you get into punk, and you got to play Bonzo Goes to Bitburg or any one of those songs. You can't really explain where the accent is on the notes. First of all, it's all downstrokes, and you have to do it, but you can't do or else it's going to sound like that doesn't work in punk. So to try to get a great guitarist who's learned all that, all those skills to go back and relearn how to can be virtually impossible.
Yeah, I always find that so interesting. I I took music theory, but on like a community college level, so no, by no means like Berklee. But even in that, I watched people who I played with, and like it almost destroyed their creativity after a while. Like if you let it, you can start losing that where you think too much in that square box. You know what I mean? You think of music too much as there's rules, and I have to do this, and this is my scale, and these are the notes, and yeah, there's that. It's always interesting, the world in between where technicality versus just creativity or feeling or whatever it may be.
Feeling is like, I think the hardest thing to find with bassists, especially bassists and drummers.
Yeah, and the rhythm section, basically. You really need a rhythm section with some feel. You need feeling in there.
And it's something you can't learn because it's where the note sits on the beat. It's where the snare hits. That might just be slightly behind, what it would be if it was quantized. I mean, there are these little subtleties, which I've found to be the hardest to teach people. And I've come across that a lot of times. And punk, that's like for drummers or guitarists. I tell you, it's probably one of the hardest musics to play. And you're not going to believe me, but I'm telling you.
Oh no, I can believe that. No, that makes total sense. That is that does not seem like it'd be an easy one to play by any means.
Because it's not defined. It's just that maybe that's the answer. It's not like you can pick up a guitar and you're going to play that song. You're going to play the chord instead of song, but you're not playing the song.
Yeah.
Where you can maybe pick up a classical piece or something else or whatever. And once you know all the notes are pretty much, you know what I'm saying? And you kind of know that. It might be easier to handle than this other thing where you can't see exactly where that is happening and not happening. Why is that note a little bit not quite as loud as that other note? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the next time it happens, it's someplace else. And the time after that, it's someplace else. And it's like, forget it. You'd spend like years trying to dissect one song.
I love that. I love discussing that stuff and like dissecting it. And I think that's I'd always any day of the week I would rather a player who has that feeling and might not be right on, like maybe they're a little before or just a little after the beat, but like that's the swing or that's the
you'll know it when it feels right.
Yes, exactly.
It's almost like if you listen to AC/DC or something, there are rock fans who have found this, like AC/DC, or when Foreigner had songs like Urgent, and and they found that group. Def Leppard has found it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, but so there are bands that find that that thing that we're talking about. You know what I mean? So it's crazy. But anyways,
you did that. I feel like your bass playing, like in the Plasmatics. I feel like there's like, because including punk can be a genre where, and sometimes it needs it, where you're just like, if say you're the bass player, you're just playing straight, like just root notes, just straight eighths or sixteenths, and sometimes that's all you need. I feel like with you though, something you don't always see in punk is, and maybe you pulled this from like other places and past influences, but like you would move around on the neck. You wouldn't stick to just a root note, and you'd throw those little accents, you'd throw those little things in, like we're talking about, where it's like you just kind of move it here. And like it pushes the song. Like maybe people don't realize it, but it's moving the song along whether you realize or not. The bass is doing a lot of that. Like, was that something you kind of?
That's right. You're 100% right. And it's one of those things that and you're right. I think that comes from old time influences. Because to me, I call it like you have a mental Rolodex. You know what I mean? And you keep putting things in that archive constantly. And it's from everything, from playing with Gary U.S. Bonds, made me play. Do you remember that song by Jackie Wilson? It's an old song. It's like dum 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 dum. Your love. That song.
Yeah.
Higher and higher.
Higher and higher. I know that song. A great song.
It's like, I learned lessons like playing with Gary. I used to be all over the neck, right? So that song, the bass is just boom, literally for the whole song. But I would do that and then boom, 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 boom. You've been constantly adding shit. One day he said, okay, Boo Boo, you're gonna sit there and you're gonna play that song for 15 minutes, and I don't want to hear one other note. He said, "Let me see if you can do that." And I sat there. I think it was one of the hardest exercises I ever had to learn. You know what I mean?
Just keeping it straight, just playing it straight.
That's it. No little run, no riff after 4 bars, nothing. You know what I mean? It was almost like going to an old school where a guy's sitting with a ruler and, do this 15 minutes. But you learn things from that. It taught you groove. It taught you, like, for example, if I play bass on a Kiss song, I noticed, because I'm finding that a lot of people can't play those bass notes for some reason, because I'm using the ups also. So, I'll use the ups and downs and syncopate a little bit. And people, like you say, used to just down.
Yeah.
No. So when they get dum, they're like, uh-oh, wait a minute.
They know what to do with themselves.
Exactly. And so you try, I guess that comes from different kinds of playing, which is automatically they're just there. It's in your head, it's in your fingers. So when you play, even if you're playing that rock part, that a little bit of this or that might sneak in there somehow. And I think that's what makes it a little bit more unique. Like, a good song to listen to is Master Plan by the Plasmatics. And the bass part. You should go back and listen to that bass part. You're a bass player. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because I wrote this down, because in the book you talk about that bass line and how it's like Motown-punk, which I love. I had to go back and listen, like, right after I read that. I'm like, all right, I got it.
So you did?
Oh, yeah, no, I went back and listened, because I have this actually written down. Like, I was going to ask you, because I do hear it in there, and like James Jamerson, who played like bass on almost all those old Motown songs. I mean, he's one of the greatest bass players of all time. Like,
yep,
an influence on you, obviously. But like, have you ever, like, besides just maybe playing along with the songs, like, how much have you dissected those? Like, have you ever really kind of went back and just like really studied those bass lines or tried to see like what he's doing? Because I mean, you're doing it in those songs. You can hear Jamerson's influence. I mean, like you were saying, you're doing punk Motown.
In a lot of ways. Yeah, I hear, my ears, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I hear things. It just comes. So for example, if I'm I'll listen to a Motown station now, on Sirius, for example. And I'll listen to a song, and the bass part, I hear it clearly. Exactly what he's doing, every accent, every little mistake. Some of the songs had little mistakes in them. You know what I mean?
It's the charm of the song. I
know, but I just hear it, and and what happens is it just goes into my head. Like back in the day, I would play along to those songs, and I try to get them exact. If I was doing one of, that's how I learned to play bass. Was playing along to, Zeppelin, playing along to Kids, playing along to Motown, playing along, Michael Jackson, all that stuff. I just learned as many songs as I could, and I think by doing that, you're just constantly getting more skills, besides the basics of the theory and knowing your notes, etc. The other thing, you're just getting a bunch of different riffs, a bunch of different thoughts. Somehow you'll use it differently, or you'll put things together and mix and match, the way your creativity calls for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like you have the mind of a music producer, like the way that you can think of, like, because musicians, I feel like a lot of times, and I think this is what a good producer does, and I think you probably do it, just the way you're like discussing music now. Maybe a musician in their head knows some of these things we're talking about, but don't clearly, they can't get to it. Like, they can't put it into words. And I feel like you can. Like, you understand it from a way that someone might in their head go, well, I want the song to sound like this, but you can get it out. You can actually get that out of their head, even when maybe they can't get the own thing out of their head themselves.
I think you're right, but that's where the producing comes in, because you're right. You have to, as a producer, you have to be able to, explain to people what it is that you want. As a musical director, you have to be able to explain to people, what you want. And as a producer, you have to be able to hear everything as a whole. So being able to hear all the individual parts, what their purposes are, where the holes are, so there's a lot of thinking that goes into, producing a record, besides the sonics and the frequencies and everything else that goes with that. But so you become very detail oriented.
Yeah, and you've had, it seems like, that musical mind long before you were even doing, even before you applied it to music production. But where does that come into play for you? Like, when do you start, after like musical director and all that, like, where does the production side of starting to work on other people's music and record them and stuff, where does that all start coming into play for you?
When did that come into play?
Yeah. When did you start doing that?
Well, I think the first one, let me see. Well, the songwriting started with John Waite. I think John Waite was my first cover. Do you remember on the Missing You album?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I had a song called Dark Side of the Sun on that record. That was the first cover I got. That was a song that was supposed to be on my album if I would have gotten a solo deal, which I didn't get. So, but instead of the solo deal, the record company guy said, but I do like that song, Dark Side of the Sun. Can I use it for John Waite? I said, okay. But it was, again, a good songwriting credit. After that, since I'd always wanted to do it myself anyways, I think my records were the first ones, my demos first. And then from there, I really started getting into music production. And then when I first made my solo deal finally, well, no, even before that, because working with Steven, we spent a lot of time in the studio working with some great engineers. Bob Clearmountain was like our regular engineer, Shelly Yakis, these are the top guys. So Jimmy Iovine,
Nice.
So with these guys, being in the studio with these guys on a daily basis for years, it was a good 2-3 years. That's where I think I learned, a lot of what I, learned later.
So you kind of, and I always wonder that with musicians, it sounds like you kind of paid attention to that side. Like, some people go into the studio, I feel like, do their part and kind of like just, whatever, leave or don't get ingrained in it. And then other people kind of go in and go like, oh no, what are you doing over there? Like, what are you doing with those buttons? Or are you doing with this or that? It sounds like you were a little more like you studied that stuff and paid attention.
Yeah, I was always, because, I hated being dependent on anything or anybody, So anytime that I get into anything, I immediately start thinking the end game of how can I do that, just in case I don't have that guy to do that.
Yeah, and you need to in music.
Yeah, and pretty much in a lot of things, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Yeah, which I'm finding these days. It could be to get a mechanic to fix something. And sometimes you better learn it yourself. It's all the crap you have to go through with the mechanics trying to rip you off. But you know what I mean? Yeah. But anyways, back to music. It's I just lost my train of thought because I went into this mechanic.
Oh, what were we talking about? Oh, like
you too.
Yeah, production and getting into producing and paying attention to what they're doing and everything.
Paying attention, that's right. So like I was saying, I always like to, pay attention and learn as much as I can for something because I want to be able to take it home and try to reproduce. I want to know, how is he doing that? How's he getting that sound? And especially when you're young like that, I'm like, I want to have my own studio. I want to be able to do that, Yeah. Some people don't care. You're 100% right. There are a lot of people who are like, no way, I don't care what he's doing. I'm not interested. I've got friends like that who could care less.
Just record me and let me go home.
And there's some positive to that, because doing the way I did it, always being the one making your own records, playing instruments, I'm constantly working. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I can imagine. You're doing all parts of it.
You're always working. That's the downside of that. Where, if you could just, sometimes, I even wrote it in the book that maybe I regretted at one point that I didn't just let go of the reins, and maybe let Nile Rodgers or somebody just take the reins and just go. But I was just so, I was just so protective and, over. You know what I mean? It's like it was your baby. You didn't want anybody, to take it over or, make you lose control.
No, it makes sense. It's your creative. I mean, it is. It really is your creative baby. I mean, you don't want people messing with it. You want it a certain way.
That's right. That's right. I mean, but like I learned later on, it would be nice though that you open it up a little bit, and like a lot of people, they'll use the skills of the other people to better their things and to give them more power to go back to doing what they were doing in the first place. That's the smarter way to do it. You know what I mean?
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying with that. That also makes that makes sense as well.
Oh, you know what I mean? In other words, they go and they use the great, producer that gives them, 3 #1 records. Then they have the control. And they can do absolutely anything they want to do after that. even though that's not really true, because I know that there was one big artist, I'm not going to say who it was, but who tried exactly that method. They let her go back and do her next record, which flopped.
It didn't work as well.
Yeah, it didn't work as well. And then they told her, "Okay, are we done now?
Oh no!
Go back and sing."
Yeah, maybe stick to singing. Don't
exactly.
But I'm also interested, like when it comes to producing and your history of producing bands. Do you feel like is there a difference at all going in if you know the people personally beforehand versus not knowing them? Like, does that make it easier or harder if you go in?
Yeah, it makes it easier. It makes it easier because, the whole thing, the personalities are a big part of producing, because half the job of producing is it's like psychology. You have different characters in the band, like the Ramones, Edie's one kind of character, Joey Ramone was another character, and you had to deal with them individually to get them to do certain things, to talk them into doing things, to let them agree to put keyboards and bells on their records, things like that. But anyways, but I knew those guys before because we used to hang out and CBGBs and this and that. So I think that takes a layer away, because people they need this. As a producer, a lot of times everybody has to respect you. They have to believe you know what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, because the same way I said that you're protective of your product, you're probably producing somebody who thought he could produce his own thing. And the record company told him no. So he wants you to prove to him why you're there.
Yeah. Jeez.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. That can't be fun having to have that against you, where it's like the guy already in his head has this thing like, well, I could be doing this. Like, you need to prove your worth.
That's right. Exactly. And you'll say things, I don't want to get this detail about it, but you'll say things, they'll go, are you sure about that? I think it should be this, or maybe it should be this. Those are the challenges you can have as being in the studio. Or if you're well respected, which comes with time, and success, then people will leave you alone, But if you know people, they already know you, they know what you've done, they've worked with you, they're confident what you're going to do with their vocals, they're like, let John do it, we know, instead of like, oh no, yeah, what's he going to do?
Do you, as a producer, I imagine you do this, is there a lot of making people think that something was their idea? Like, sometimes you have to get things done by making them believe that they got there. You know what I mean? You also have to put it in their head. But for them to even get it done, they have to think that they did it.
Well, I'm not going to say I haven't used that technique. I have, but that's not something that I like really endorse and do a lot of. It's like, if somebody has an idea, I have an idea. Whichever idea is best, I will use. And if it was mine, I want them to know it was mine.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, you want the credit of it. I guess there's that part of it. I don't totally want you to think it was yours.
Right. Well, it's true. You can be, and I've been victim to this. You can be too nice too sometimes. Where, like you say, you're constantly trying to make other people feel good. You want to make them feel good about what they're doing. So you're constantly giving in. You're giving away your energy and your stuff to just make them feel good. And that's you got to be careful about that. You know what I mean? Where you're overcompensating, if you know what I'm saying. Oh, you're a wonderful singer. Oh no, you're as good as all of them. Yeah.
Don't feed that ego too much.
Exactly. That's right.
Have you found in your in producing and stuff, like going in with a younger band who maybe doesn't have a defined sound or doesn't know what they're doing versus, a band who's been around, like a Kiss, like a Ramones, who obviously by the time you're working with them, they've been around for a while. Fans might have a certain way they want, even the band themselves want things to sound a certain way. Like, do you find it easier working with a younger band who doesn't have such a defined sound yet as it does with a band who already has a, somewhat established sound?
No, I think that because if you have to start finding that sound, that takes a lot of work, and a lot of times, with new bands, you're going to have different members, different guys who have different opinions, and everybody's trying to find this sound. Whereby, if like you say, if you go with Kiss, Paul and Gene have a very fixed idea of what they're trying to do. Now, as a writer, you're contributing, but I always look at it like that contribution is almost as a fifth member of that band. So anything that you're doing is in support of what the message they're trying to get across.
That makes sense.
So basically, you have a lot of the work done for you already because they already have their direction, they already have their sound, they already know what they're going to do. They know exactly how they're going to lay down their guitars. They know how they're going to mic their amps. They know how they're going to, everything. All of that is already done.
Yeah.
For the most part. Yeah. But there's one thing I just missed. Actually, I'm here talking also as a writer, not just as a producer. No, that's about the same. Because even if you're producing a band like Kiss, they use a different setup than how people record now. They're still using the old setup of a producer and an engineer.
Oh,
Who are
okay,
separate guys. These are separate guys. So, so even though you can have a new producer, they may have an engineer that's been with them for 5 albums.
Yeah.
So to that point, what I just said, that would ring true. That they'd have everything set up, they'd know how to get their drums tuned, everything would be ready. You walk in and it's like, okay, we're ready to rock, Then you have more time for creative.
That makes that actually does make sense. That makes instead of, I guess I didn't think of the going in with a blank slate can be kind of difficult if you have to filling in those blanks that you might not have to so much with an older band, or a band who's been doing it a while. That's right. But what I also wanted to ask you too, with bands, when you go in, right away, how soon do you realize if it's going to be a smooth recording, session or experience? Can you tell right away if things are going to go well or if it's going to be hard? Is that something you know almost instantly from working with the band?
You think you do. You're I've seen walking into sessions and going, and you just see how things are starting, and you go, "Oh, brother, it's going to be a tough one." Just set your mind, and then you're just going through it the whole time, and you're going through, and then all of a sudden, you get towards the end, and it clicks, and you're more excited than anything. Wow! And you're going, "How the fuck did this come together?" I'm sorry, anyway.
Oh, you're fine.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's and it's so that can happen. That kind of thing happens too. It's really true. Or
keeps you on your feet.
Yeah, or you think that everything, these guys got it together, it's going to be easy, and then so in other words, to answer your question, there is no definitive. It can go either way from any direction. You're just praying to get to the finish line where you could listen to that thing finished on a 2-track and say, my job is done.
I mean? That is great.
On,
that is funny. Living in an age too, just one more on music production, but living in an age now where, recording has obviously become so much easier. I'm sure throughout the decades you've seen it change so much, whether it's how much it costs to record an album, how long it takes, all that stuff. And we live in a time now where there's so much you can self-record. There's a lot of we produce this ourselves. We did, we self-produce this and that. Do you feel like there's something kind of lost with that, the role of a producer? You know what I mean? I feel like nowadays maybe people don't think of that role as much. The stuff we're talking about, the things that you've mentioned, again, your mind works in a way that you don't just automatically have if you're a musician. Not everyone has that, and I think that's something very important of a producer. Do you feel like some of that's lost nowadays? People don't think about how important a producer and stuff is?
Yeah, I think it is lost. And I mean, God, luckily I'm still involved in different types of music. So I see a lot of people work, I see a lot of different working environments. I'll still go into the studio with the big drums and the big room and the this and the big board. But at the same time, I'll be in Norway or Sweden watching a guy with a laptop create a track that's amazing in a matter of 3 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Probably different from the 80s.
Exactly. It's a different skill. And the old time producers, the way we had them, the guys who just go in who were more creative guys, maybe You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, even the ones that are creative, but also, those guys, they just moved on to something else. So now instead of working on a Neve or an SSL or something else, they work on Pro Tools or something else, like the Bob Clear Mountains. They're still working, or the Lord Algae guys, for example. But the one thing that's different is that these guys that I just mentioned are engineer producers.
They're doing both.
Okay, back in the day, going back there, there were many that were producers separate from the engineer.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
producer would sit behind the desk and he'd tell people what to do. And that's it. He'd tell the engineer, okay, I need more of this on the drums, I need more of this on that, blah, blah, blah. So that, unfortunately, that role has disappeared.
It's become like a hybrid almost. Like now it's just one position.
Yeah, it's not like it's completely disappeared, because you still, I guess, have some of that in Nashville or, things like that. But in general, it's kind of disappeared, because like I said before, a lot of kids have gotten so good at doing things on a laptop and, with minimal stuff. And they're creating so many things, like for instruments. Now you can have live drums. I mean, Logic has the thing where you hit a button and drums start playing themselves. It's like, you know what I mean? It's gotten wild. To the point. It's taking away, and the worst of it is that the drum sound that you're going to get in there is going to be better than what you'll get in all those big rooms. Because the thing that they're getting in there comes from the big room. In other words, they're drum samples from Clearmount and from this, from that.
Yeah.
So in other words, some guy with a laptop is getting access to all the tools necessary to do the job that it used to take 3, 4, 10 musicians, strings, orchestras to do.
Wow.
So the whole business has changed. It's like even that. I mean, let's face it, Motown, they'd have an orchestra in the room.
Yeah. That is wild.
Think about it. You know what I mean? How many people they have. Now you send it to one guy in Norway or Finland, who's a great orchestrator, and he'll create you an amazing orchestra that sounds better than any real orchestra, using their sounds and just playing it better.
Wow.
And then, and give you an orchestral arrangement that nobody in the world would know that it wasn't an orchestra.
Yeah, that's so, I don't know, it's so conflicting, because in a way it's beautiful that we had, like, it is nice those things exist, and at the same time, like we're saying, like those things exist, but then people almost think they're a replacement for the people, and it's not always that way, Well,
okay, to your point, I'm going to say this, I have a friend, okay, a friend, and a very good friend, where, he's a producer as well. We work together all the time. He's a German producer. He had a huge hit. A song called Scatman. I don't know if you remember it.
No.
It was like a big hit. Huge hit in Japan, sold more than Michael Jackson. Here, huge, everywhere.
Nice.
He did that whole recording on a Mackie board. Okay? This is when he first started. Okay, so he had a little Mackie board and, I don't know, a couple of ADATs or something. And that song was his hugest hit. Now he sits here like 25 years later. He has every piece of equipment, every sample you can imagine, everything. But he can't replace that hit that he had on the Mackie board.
Oh, man. That Mackie, you gotta give it credit.
You know what I'm saying? So I guess the point I'm making on this whole thing is that it's not really the board and the equipment. It's also the creativity of the person, even with all the tools. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, just because you have like $1 million studio, even back in the day, you may have top of the line analog equipment and everything, but if what you're recording isn't good, it doesn't make the song good.
That's right. It doesn't make the song good. It's and the problem is that they want it all in one person now. That's what makes things tough. You can't be like, for example, I do a lot of digital recording now. At first, I started it with Max Norman. I had analog machines that I bought down, 24-track machines in my house in Key West. This is going back some years. And, the weather was messing them up, the reels, all kinds. I was like, I couldn't find anybody to come fix them. You'd have to fly somebody in from Miami. I said, this is ridiculous. I said, I was about to make the next record, Lost Cathedral for the Crown of Thorns, and Max Norman, I brought him down. You know, he did Ozzy's record. You know, Max Norman did Diary of a Madman. He did,
Oh yeah.
yeah, a lot of great records, Max Norman. Anyway, so he flew down for us to start working on digital records, and we had the first PC, you know, that could have like maybe, I don't know, 12 tracks working without the thing crashing. You know, we went through the biggest nightmare trying to make that record on a PC, which we finally got done. But I'm telling you, it was months of struggling. So, I mean, later on when I left Key West, I was asked to go to Berlin for a while to work with artists for BMG. I took a certain period of time and just said, listen, I can't be a producer that's not an engineer anymore. I have to be able to engineer my own records. So I'm going to take X amount of time, and Logic is what everybody's using in this country, which is, you know, now Apple. And I said, I'm going to learn this well. You know what I mean? And it's like I'm going back to school, and I'm going to learn how to work with all these guys so that I can be a producer and engineer producer. That way I can continue to do my business. I can do songs for films. I can make albums on my own, alone, without anybody else in the room, you know. And so that's what I did. But you had to go back and relearn or learn a new skill.
Yeah, everything you already knew, like, it's like, all right, time to, you know, I'm sure some of the foundation's the same, but there's a lot where it's like, no, you gotta, now it's time to, like, learn a whole new thing.
Yeah, well, it's different. I mean, before you're a producer, yes, I knew how to walk into the room and tell the assistant engineer, pull this up on, you know, this, I need a little more compression out of that one, you know, do this, that, you know, or you knew all the stuff in an analog studio, in that environment. So the only difference is now you're turning the buttons.
Oh,
you have
okay.
to go back compression. You have to learn, you know, what's 10 in compression, what's 1, you know, where, what's the 300 hertz frequency, where's the bass, you know, you have to learn all this stuff, you know.
Jeez.
And that's what you have to learn, you know, and you have to learn it well, because the record companies these days, especially in like even the pop world, for example, they want songs that are finished. Even as demos, there's no like these days of somebody walking in with an acoustic guitar and saying, I got a great song. You know what I mean? Now they want, like, you know, they want to hear a final song that sounds like the record is done. And when literally all they have to do is take their artist and just put them on the record, replace the voice. That's all. Matter of fact, they even end up keeping half the demo vocals. So
Wow.
So it's gotten to that point where, you know, you have to be able to make literally finished records, or you're always dependent on somebody else.
Yeah, that is such a far cry from, like, including with labels, like, where bands go, like, get holed up in a studio for a year or two and, like, keep adding and changing things. Like, no, the demo needs to be like, you need to be fully realized in the demo. We need this done.
That's right. It's not that whole two-step process, as far as from what I do as a songwriter. I think that two-step process is gone. You know what I mean? That's it. You have to, if they like the song, 90% of the time they'll buy the files from you,
Wow.
so that they could use the exact same files that you used.
That's so. And the wild thing is too, it's not like this is ever like end all be all. Like, this will also change again. Like, you know, things.
It could be with there's vinyls coming back. I mean, who knows? It's a crazy world.
Yeah, I feel like people. That's something I've noticed. And I always like talking about, you know, this stuff with people who, you know, like yourself, who see it change so much. Where I think that's something you realize is, yeah, it's like you really don't. You can never think that this is what the music industry is, because it's going to change again. And I mean, it could be months, it could be years. Like,
yeah, well, that's true. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, it's like, you know, every time we think we know something, I think one little story that gets me, I get a kick out of, is Nile Rodgers is an old friend of mine, and he's you know, he's a fantastic producer. He's great producer. You know, he's produced everybody from, you know, are you familiar with him? He did everybody from David Bowie's Let's Dance to, you know, Since the Sledge, and to Madonna, and I mean,
all the big names.
All the big names. And so he, you know, we were speaking one day, and he's telling me, oh man, I don't know what these kids are doing anymore with this the dance music, these sounds. I have no idea what this is. He said, all I know how to do is think, you know, the same thing I've been doing. And he said, so I'm just going to just keep doing that and see what happens. or I'm going to go work with some of these guys, and see what happens. So he ends up working with Daft Punk,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And they end up doing a song that has no electronics. It has him doing his little ding a ding ding thing. The Daft Punk guy has he has like a vocoder voice that he uses.
Yeah.
But that's about it. It's not like those big dance synths or any of that stuff. And it's very basic, a regular bass, real drums just playing. The song is Get Lucky. It became his biggest song of his career.
Wow. That song is huge.
And it was the biggest electronic song of all time. The only thing is it had no electronics.
That is
so you
amazing.
know what I'm saying? It's so great. So every dance, I went to all these dance conventions and everything like that, and everybody's looking for the newest sound, and everybody's making sounds go whoo, 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 and do all these things. Everybody's fighting all over Norway, Finland, always trying to find a better sound. He goes back to regular guitar, a little drum playing, a regular cool bass part, and that guy doing his little Daft Punk thing, and that's it. Biggest record of all time.
It is wild.
So you can never. It's really hard to foresee the future or what's going to happen. You're right. The music industry can change at any time, and I have no idea what it's going to do or where it's going. So we just we just stay on we just sail away on the ship and see what happens.
And you again, like, you've done every aspect of it. Like, you've seen the ins and outs. When we say music industry, you've kind of seen it and done it all. Like you of anyone would know this. How just how much it changes and all that, because again,
it does change. It does. It really does. So it's like, but I mean, I think it's in some ways it's exciting. I don't like the fact that we don't make money selling records anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping that they're going to come up with some new avenues that are available to more people than the people who can go out and make millions touring. Because there are a lot of artists out there, a lot of musicians, and they have to figure out how to survive. They can't go out there and command $20,000 a gig. They have to pay to play.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean, working musicians. Yeah, if you're not like up there as one of the big ones, or playing the arenas or doing things like that, like a lot of people, like, you're working musicians. You gotta
Right. I know.
So right now, as we close this up, where can people find the book? Where can they find you online? Where can they find all that good stuff? Which, I mean, again, I highly recommend getting this book. It is absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you very much. Well, it's all right there online. You can actually get autographed copies of the book on my website, which is www.jeanbeauvoir.com. JeanBeauvoir.com. And also it's available at Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and pretty much all the online stores. Check my Facebook as well. I have an official page and a personal page. And between all of those sites, we'll keep you in tune of what's going on.
Do you have any book signings lined up?
I've been doing some virtual events, so everything ends up on the Facebook page or on my website every time I'm doing something. So there will be some things coming up, but we'll keep you posted.
Very nice, very nice. Well, I mean, John, this has been amazing. I've had so much fun talking to you. Everybody go pick up the book. And you're right. I mean, I could talk to you for hours about this stuff. You've done it all, and I like talking about it all. But yeah, everyone go check out Bet My Soul on Rock and Roll. It is an amazing book. I cannot wait to finish it. I'll probably keep reading it tonight. It has been great.
Good. All right.
But I've been talking to John, and now we're gonna play. I don't know. We'll play some Plasmatics and a bunch of different stuff. We'll now play a bunch of music from you right here on the Power Chord Hour. Right here on the 100th episode of the Power Chord Hour podcast. That was today's guest, Jean Beauvoir, with his song Drive You Home. His voice is absolutely amazing. I mean, outside of, great musician, like bassist and guitarist and record producer, I mean, my God, he has a set of pipes on him for sure. Before that was the Ramones with Pet Sematary off the Jean Beauvoir produced album Brain Drain, and he also helped write that song and also played bass on that recording. If you know anything about Brain Drain. That was D.D. Ramone's last record with the Ramones, and he wasn't particularly, he wasn't super involved with the band at the end there. I think he was about done with the band, and I actually wish we could have talked to John a little more about that, and Dee Dee's departure and everything right after Brain Drain. But John did a lot on Pet Sematary, the song, and I mean also just Brain Drain as a whole. He did a ton on there, even playing a lot of the instruments. So a nice little side note there if you didn't know that. And opening up that block of music, that was John with his punk Motown bass. I loved, we were talking about that earlier. That was a song we were talking about, Master Plan, where, Plasmatics, where he's playing punk rock, but you can hear that James Jamerson influence from, Motown, just that, like, not just straight up root notes from, your traditional punk rock, really moving around the neck and throwing those little accents in and doing those little things that sometimes punk bassists forget about. But, John is not one of those guys. He remembered all about it. And you heard it right there on there. So there's something for you, something Plasmatic, something from his solo career, something he produced. I mean, again, he's done it all. He's seen it all. I could have talked to him for easily another 3 hours. I can't even tell you how many questions I just skipped because all of a sudden it was like we were well over an hour in, and we had to start wrapping things up. But cannot say enough good things about Jean. That was so much fun talking to him. That was really, really cool. Definitely go pick up his book, Bet My Soul on Rock and Roll, Diary of a Black Punk Icon, and it is really good. I'm not halfway through. I guess I'm getting close to halfway through done, and it's already amazing. I've been reading it for about a week and cannot put it down. It is, I mean, the way the guy just nonchalantly talks about, like, I'm on tour with Gary U.S. Bonds, or we're doing the Dick Clark tour, and like Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley would sometimes like ask him to like come up and play on short notice, which kind of talked about in the interview. But like just reading it is so funny because it's like, to anybody I think reading that, they're gonna go like what the fuck? Like a 15-year-old just can get up there and play with, I mean, like Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley. Like, that's insane. And I mean, you're reading his book, it's just like, it's just another kind of part of his career. And I mean, that's just the beginning. I mean, you keep going through, his career is full of those moments of, just, I mean, he turned down, we didn't talk about it, but, a big story, which I'm sure he's talked about a ton in interviews lately, talking about the book, is turning down Prince to join Prince's band, and not wanting to be, he made a great point, and I'm not going to try to quote it verbatim because I can't remember the exact words, but something along the lines of, you really can't name who Prince's bass players were. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool that you would get to be Prince's bass player, but that's what you would be. Exactly that. Prince's bass player, not known by name, kind of, who knows where you're going to go after that. You're kind of defined and stuck there, and it's not what he wanted. And I respect that an insane amount as a musician, to go, that's some integrity to go, because this was not like early on before Prince was like, something or anything like that. Like, this was really in the middle of Prince being, just the powers that be, being like Purple Rain Prince in the 80s, like that kind of Prince. That was the Prince that Jean said no to. So, I mean, to have some musical integrity like that, I think is absolutely amazing. To bet on yourself and instead go your own route. And, really his solo stuff, which I'd heard some stuff, but really kind of jumped into his catalog of like solo, like including like that 80s stuff more recently, getting ready for the interview. And like his voice is just amazing, and he crafted just on his own some amazing, like, just really catchy pop songs, and really knows how to write a hook, and, again, just an amazing singer. But that was really fun. I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I enjoyed doing it. And it's funny, if you're listening to this on the podcast, it's the 100th episode. Radio show, I believe we're up to 279. But we get to celebrate the 100th episode of the show twice. I got to celebrate the 100th episode back in 2018 of the radio show, and now I get to do it again for the podcast, and it's very cool. I didn't even mean for it to be Jean to be our 100th guest, or 100th episode, I should say. But it just kind of worked that way. When I was having him on was the day before the 100th episode, and I'm like, oh, like you could not ask for, like, what an amazing person to have for the 100th episode. And I've wanted to interview him for a while, and what better time than his book being out? So that was awesome to have him on, and I just want to thank Jean again. Go check it out. Bet My Soul on Rock and Roll. Really, really good book. Cannot recommend it enough. And I think that is it for this episode. So if you like what you heard, go follow us online at Power Chord Hour on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Go find us on YouTube. Just search Power Chord Hour. Please subscribe to the YouTube page. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you probably already know you can find us wherever you enjoy your podcast. But if you don't know, you can listen to the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. And if you would, rate, review, and subscribe wherever that is that you're listening. And hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. Always love to hear from people who listen to the show. And I'm going to have some Power Chord Hour, some more stickers. I just ordered some. They should be here within the next week or so. So if you want to hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. I will gladly send you some free PCH stickers. And so that is going to be it. That is episode 100 of the Power Chord Hour podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this here podcast. I cannot believe we're 100 episodes in. It feels like it was just yesterday when I was like, hey, you know what this radio show could use? A podcast element. Like that's something we should do. And actually, really, I thought about it for a long time and then finally did it. But again, it feels just like yesterday that I was recording that first the episode 1 of this that was probably like 20 minutes long, just going like, hey, this is what the podcast is going to be. And really, honestly, the podcast has probably become way more than whatever I said it was going to on episode 1, because I've ended up doing a lot more with the podcast than I expected to. I was already like 4 years into the radio show by the time we started doing this podcast, and it was kind of a it was something I was going to do, but I didn't even know originally it was going to be a weekly thing. For a while, I thought I was going to do like monthly rundowns, like I do, like at the end of the month each month, and then maybe like post interviews as I did them. But no, now it's become a weekly thing. Pretty early on, it became a weekly thing. But I'm really happy that we're up 100 episodes now. That is crazy. So, I guess if you put 100 episodes of these, 279 of the radio show, I've done a shit ton of Power Chord Hour episodes. That's if you do the math on all that, you get a shit ton. And that is exactly what I've done here with the Power Chord Hour. So for the Power Chord Hour, I'm Andy.